Well, hey, everybody. It is Mike here, getting ready to record episode 113 of Mike in the Midwest a day early because we're flip flopping Monday and Tuesday because of the holiday. So, Mike in the Midwest today, the podcast recordings tomorrow afternoon. So, settle in and here we go. It's a Labor Day special. Let's do this. Welcome to episode 113 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast since March of 2008. Hey, how you doing? Happy Memorial Day. Happy Labor Day here in the United States of America. Apparently, I've been chilling out a little bit too much today. It is the unofficial end of summer instead of the unofficial start to summer. We're wrapping it all up, and it is a glorious weekend here for me because college football is back in all its glory. And I've been just soaking in all of the great, terrible, and amazing football games, college football games here around our house. It's been great because that's a sport I love baseball the most. I grew up playing baseball. I've talked about that many times here on the show, but college football is a game I love to watch. It's a passion of mine. Of course, you always see me here on the podcast recordings in my black and gold. I am Mizzou all the way. Paige is a graduate of Mizzou. I always wanted to go to Mizzou myself. Couldn't afford it as a student when I was going through high school. But my kid getting to go there is even better than me getting to go there. So I will always be a Mizzou Tiger fan. So the Tigers had their first win last Thursday night against Louisiana Tech. Again, we got to have our first game ever at Faurot Field where we had season tickets, where we had bleacher seats instead of sitting on the grass for the last 15 years or so. And that was pretty amazing. So we had fun. So check my Instagram. I took a picture of our seats right there at about the 40-yard line. It was pretty cool. So I'm excited to see some of these SEC teams come through this year. Georgia comes to town. Kentucky comes to town. We'll see how that goes. Florida comes to town. It could be ugly, but I have faith in our Tigers. We could have a good season. Again, we're 1-0. We're first place in the SEC East, tied with Georgia right now. So we'll see how that goes. But hope you're having a wonderful Labor Day weekend, spending some time with friends and family, maybe catching up on your TV shows, maybe your streaming shows, maybe stuff on Disney Plus. I know Disney Plus Day comes here on September 8th. So what is that? Today's the 5th. So in 3 days, we have a lot of new content coming there, some Frozen content, some Star Wars content, some Marvel content. So if you're into any of those franchises, you are going to be set here very soon, 72 hours. So get excited for that. But again, I love the feedback. Is Disney Plus Day something you are looking forward to for next week's show? Let me know. Is that something that is just totally a marketing thing? To me, it is. I could care less, to be honest, about Disney Plus Day. We don't ever turn on Disney Plus around here. We've had it since was that 2019 when they announced that deal where you could buy 3 years of Disney Plus for like one chunk, where it was discounted pretty severely. I bit because I didn't, it was an unknown product at the time. I bought the 3 years at that rate. And so we've had it for those 3 years. I've never, obviously I paid for it ahead of time, so we haven't had any bills. Whether I renew again when it comes up again, we'll see. I enjoyed The Mandalorian. I really enjoyed Obi-Wan Kenobi. That was a great show, but I'm just a sports guy. So I don't know. We'll see. The one thing I really do enjoy is being able to watch any of the Star Wars movies anytime I want at the click of a button on any device. That's almost worth the price of admission. And I think here's the other thing. If I renew, this is where they're going to get me too. If I renew, I might renew at a higher price because I might renew with the bundle with ESPN Plus. Because with all the college football they have on ESPN Plus with some of the minor games, I might even get that too. Because I don't have that right now. Because there's plenty of college football on TV. I mean, seriously, there's more college football on regular cable TV than you could ever watch. But then again, there's more with ESPN. But I don't need Hulu. I don't want that. I don't watch anything on Hulu, so I don't need that. But it's crazy. I just don't want another subscription. I don't know if you guys have that, like, subscription. What do they call that? Subscription, not anxiety, but subscription, just kind of wearing you out. All those subscriptions. I know just this morning, we had Paramount Plus for 1 month to watch the Big Brother live feeds. I kind of fell out of love with everything going on with that show. So I canceled the Paramount Plus after, less than 30 days this morning when I was on the treadmill. So I just, I don't have many subscriptions. And I try to keep track of that stuff because that stuff can add up, $10 a month here, $10 a month there. You got to watch that so it doesn't get out of control. So I really pay attention to like where my money's going as far as monthly fees. But Disney Plus, we'll see. We'll see. They put out good. I'm not saying they don't put out good content. They put out really good content. And if I had a little kid, it'd be a no brainer because and that's the other thing. We had a party yesterday here at the house. Speaking of what's going on here around the Be Our Guest Podcast Studios this past week, yesterday we had a birthday party here at the house. Pam's family. We celebrated her mom and her dad and her sister. They all have birthdays within 1 week. So we had a birthday party for all three of them. And my nephew came over. He's started kindergarten this year. He's a great kid, awesome kid. And he came over and he is a huge Cars fan, loves cars. He's in that Cars phase, moving away from dinosaurs into cars. And so everything, is cars. So having Disney Plus here is awesome because when, everybody else, because he's the only kid here now, because we're all adults at this point, um, we got to bring him down to the basement. You could go to Disney Plus. There's not just the Cars movies, Cars 1, 2, 3, but there's all these Cars shows that are on Disney Junior and stuff, which I didn't know because, my youngest is in high school now. I'm so out of touch with all that stuff. I used to be totally in with Doc McStuffins and Handy Manny and all that stuff back 10 years ago. Man, I knew every Disney Junior character, plot, subplots, every show. It's funny as your kids grow up and you move out of that, you become so out of touch with the latest, young kids, Disney Junior plots. I mean, at some point I'd watched every Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I mean, 100 times. I could do the Goofy dance. Like when they did the hot dog dance. I mean, I had the Goofy moves down. Pam had the Minnie Mouse moves down. We had it. We jammed. Mallory always tried to do the Daisy Duck. It was just a thing around here, but we haven't done that for years. So it was kind of fun though to have my nephew over here to explore Disney Plus beyond just the Star Wars movies, to get in there. Oh, you like cars? Let's see what we got. And I was just going to put on the Cars movie, right? And I got in there and there's all kinds of Cars content. And then he wanted to watch the Muppets. And so instead of showing him like he likes the Muppet Babies, nope, I had to show him the Muppet movie, which was the very first movie I ever saw at the movie theater with my grandma at Village Square Theater in Hazelwood, Missouri. My grandma took me to that, the one with Kermit starting off with a Rainbow Connection. Do 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 do. Love that song. But yeah, I showed him the Muppet movie. He wasn't as entertained, I don't think, with that movie, because that movie, I swear, when I watched it, I was shocked at how many like famous people were in that movie from the time period, late 70s, early 80s. Like Richard Pryor's in that movie. It was crazy. And it's kind of adult humor too. And there's not a whole lot of Muppets in that movie, as much as like the more recent kind of properties. But anyway, so I showed him that. Probably not a hit. I enjoyed it. He probably didn't. But it is kind of fun to have if you have a kid coming around, because it's a million things of content for a kid. I mean, we just turned it on. He had 100 things he could watch at our house, which was great. What else is going on around here? We had our big high school football game, First Responders Night, on Friday night at the football stadium. We loved that. It was a rainy, kind of miserable night, but we still got to have the game ball brought in by the Medevac helicopter, which was awesome. Go to my Instagram at Be Our Guest Mike. Check out the reels. You can see the helicopter come in. They bring the football. They land on the 50. They come out of the helicopter. They give the football to two special veterans that were in attendance at the football stadium. They hold up the football. And then we kick off the game. We had some veterans, part of the Patriot Guard there on their Harleys, do a hot lap around the track before the game. It was awesome. They brought in the flag. They brought in the football team. And then our head football coach, Eli Drinkwitz from the University of Missouri Tigers, he comes in the second quarter via helicopter as well, does a hot lap around the stadium in his helicopter, and then lands on the softball field and watches the rest of the game there in the corner of the end zone. So that was kind of a neat football game. It really rallies our community together. We raised $2,000 for the Backstoppers, which you probably have something similar in your community. The Backstoppers is a group that we have here in St. Louis that supports fallen and also severely injured first responders that get either killed or severely injured in the line of duty. So firemen, policemen, paramedics, that supports them and their families in the case of of tragic emergencies. They'll take care of their families for the rest of the time that they need it. So we had a 90-minute dash for cash. $2,000 was raised in the stands, and thanks to the fans from Jackson, Missouri, from the Jackson Indians football team, they also were part of the festivities. They were the opposing team, and they helped us raise that money too. So that team was awesome as well. All right, so we had a birthday party, we had a football game, we got to go to Mizzou on Thursday nights. We've had a lot going on here. I will tell you that we're recording this week's Be Our Guest podcast episodes Tuesday night, tomorrow night, because of the Labor Day holiday. So you still have time to join us. We'd love to have you join us tomorrow night. It's going to be around, we might actually record the listener question show a little bit early. So maybe jump in around 5 o'clock Eastern, but we'll do, back to back. So the second show will probably be around 6 o'clock Eastern. And I'm just going to give you a kind of, since you're the patron, since you're the biggest supporters of the show, I'm going to give you a heads up. On one of those shows, there should be a major announcement that you're not going to want to miss about the Be Our Guest podcast coming out this week. I'm not sure if it's going to be on Wednesday or Friday. Probably the Friday show. There's going to be a major announcement, more than likely, probably, about the podcast. So stay tuned for that. Exciting times coming up here with the Be Our Guest podcast this week. So I'm dying to spill the beans. So it's coming up here soon this week. So you might want to join us live tomorrow as we possibly break some news. All right. Also, don't forget we have the podcast cruise coming up next July. We'd love to have you join us. If you have not signed up already, we have more people sailing on this cruise on the Disney Wish, July 3rd to 7th than we've ever had before in any of our previous 5 Disney cruises. So if you want to do that, themagicforless.com, we'd love to have you. There's still cabins available. Very few, but there's still some. All right. So let's hit the feedback because we're working on Labor Day today, which is not, I'll address that at the very end of today's show. That's kind of why I wanted to do the show on Labor Day, because I wanted to work on Labor Day for this show. This is not work. That's the whole essence of why I'm doing this on Labor Day. It's the point that I would hope somebody would make to me when I was 15 or 17. So today, let's hit the feedback from last week's show. In last week, we talked about back to school for a teacher. Like, kids are always excited about getting their crayons, their markers, their glue, their new backpack, their new outfits from Kohl's, or my back in my day, it was JCPenney's or Sears. That's kind of the kid's perspective, but a teacher's perspective is, getting your lessons prepared, getting your environment, your desks in a row, your bulletin boards set up. What's the theme for your grade level that year? How you gonna structure recess that year? Do you have all the playground equipment set for the year? How are you gonna take a lunch count every morning? Those kind of things happen during what's called O Week. We talked about that last week. And so we have a couple of pieces of feedback from last week's show. And Trisha, who's always joining us here on the feedback, which I love, up in Wisconsin, she says, I have 3 back to school perspectives. First, my parents were teachers. My dad never did anything to spruce up his room, but my mom was really artsy, and she'd lug home an overhead projector and shine it toward a wall in our house. She'd tape a big piece of paper and trace whatever it was she had drawn out on a transparent page. Then she'd cut it out and paint all of these for her bulletin boards. Okay, I gotta stop there. That's amazingly over the top. That's the definition of the teacher right there. Somebody that does this on their own time. They drag home equipment to their house to work on their own time. How many teachers do you know do that? So many. My wife is one of those teachers. I was more your dad, but my room always looked nice. I even painted my own room on my own dime. I went to the hardware store, to Handyman Hardware, and I took a NASA, because this was right after I taught at Space Camp. I took my flight suit and I had to match the paint to the NASA blue of my flight suit. And then I went in over the summer and I painted the entire classroom NASA blue. I highlighted it with silver, and then I hung up space posters all around the entire room. It was awesome. It was my second year of teaching gifted. And then I got in trouble because you're not allowed to paint classrooms like with real paint. Like that's something that the plant is supposed to do for the entire district, supposed to have a palette. Like you can't just go in and start painting district buildings. I found this out after I did it. But my principal at the time, again, was my best friend's mom in high school. And she goes, well, you know what? It's always better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. And they're probably not going to go in the middle of the school year and repaint your room. So you're good. So I had a really sweet classroom. I got in trouble, but I mean, I didn't really get in trouble. I got yelled at, but I still had the coolest looking classroom in the school. So I was kind of the other in my classrooms when I taught sixth grade with Pam. They always looked awesome, but it's because I paid Pam to decorate them for me. She did my bulletin boards, and they looked awesome because she's super creative. I'm super not creative. I'm the most uncreative person in the world. Uncreative. I don't know how that goes. Anyway, back to Trisha's comments. Secondly, was my experience as a student. I'm a nerd, she says. By the end of summer, I was bored and ready for school. I love learning, and my excitement grew when we would go back to school shopping. It was a big deal to pick out my Lisa Frank folders and my Trapper Keeper binder. I also remember bringing home my textbooks to cover them with paper grocery bags and then decorate them. Okay, that was just a hit of nostalgia for me. The Trapper Keeper was the greatest thing ever. And I will tell you that Walmart has them. They're back. You can get these at Walmart. And I've almost bought one like 10 times. But I don't use paper. Like everything I do is digital here in the office. I mean, I've even gone to the point where about 3 months ago, I bought an Apple Pencil. So I don't even take notes during, because I used to have all these notebooks that I took notes during the podcast. Like if the Ricky's dog would bark, I would write down a timestamp. So when I go back, I'd edit that piece out. Or, when I'm on the phone with Disney and they give me, a price for, okay, this is the price with insurance, this price without insurance with Memory Maker. I'm always jotting down all these notes. But I decided to get an Apple Pencil and just do it on my iPad. That way, if I ever need these notes and say I'm outside the office, I can pull these notes up then in Apple Notes on my iPhone or wherever and any of my devices. If that way I have my notepad with me all the time. It makes more sense. They're always accessible, not just sitting on the desk. I've been burned by that. I'm like, I have that information, but it's sitting on my desk in the office and I'm, at a cheerleading practice, and that's not good. So I made that change, but I want a Trapper Keeper so bad because I love those. And you're right, covering up your books, just thumbing through your books and looking at the pictures before the school year, seeing the topics you're going to learn about. I was a nerd too. So I get it, Trisha. Oh my God, that was a big hit of nostalgia for me. And she continues, lastly, as a parent, I've come to realize that my daughter doesn't share my love of school, but she always looks forward to seeing her friends again. You know what? Maybe she'll have a love of school. It could grow, but you're exactly right. Even if you're just the social person, it's great to get back to your friends. It's great to get back to the adventures. And honestly, here, I totally believe this for teachers and students. It's great to get back to routines. I think we all need routines because my routine, even though I work from home as a travel agent now, and I have since 2017, my routine changes when Pam and Mallory go back to school because over the summer, when it's kind of loosey goosey because they're getting up later, they're home all the time, stuff like that. Um, things are different. But then when they, go to school, they come home at a specific time. We tend to have dinner at a specific time. Like things are more on a regular schedule, which I am very much a regimented person. I prefer that. I don't like to have things loosey goosey. All right. And the second piece of feedback, and Trisha, thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. And Andrea, thank you for being a patron. Thank you for your feedback. She says, I've always felt a sense of excitement at the start of every school year, as far back as I could remember. Last month, I began my 28th year working in my district. Oh my gosh, that is amazing. 28 years. Congratulations. That's, oh my God, 17, and I was just tapped out. I am currently a high school, college, and career counselor. I look forward to each new year with the new students, a perfectly cleaned building, polished floors, and my awesome coworkers. Okay, Andrea, you just nailed it too. I loved when we walk in our building, especially when I taught at Wedgwood, my first building, which is, that's the one I always loved. And you're right. Like you'd walk down the hall and that thing would it was so shiny. It never looked like that, come December because the kids had French toast sticks in the cafeteria and the syrup was everywhere. But man, when you went back that first week, everything smelled and looked so good. It was like a showroom. And I mean, schools aren't supposed to look like showrooms. They're living buildings, but man, it looked good when you went back and you were excited, right? You got to see your teammates. What'd you do this summer? Where'd you go? I mean, the teachers are just like the kids. But when that building shines, oh, that is exactly right. Oh my gosh, you nailed it. Continuing on to Andrea's comments. This week's podcast made me recall the days I remember most as a student. They were the days when we would go to the school and pick up our schedules in junior high and high school. I remember coordinating with friends so we would go at the same time, so we would get our lockers together. In the afternoon following schedule pickup, there were a series of phone calls to make to friends asking about each other's schedules. There was a lot of excitement, tension, and some disappointment when your classes or lunch didn't line up with your core group of friends. Thanks for another great podcast. Andrea, thank you so much for that great feedback and for your support. I will say, you want to know like the latest and greatest, and this blew my mind. This shows how old I am. Again, I graduated high school in the 90s. My daughter, again, Mallory, started high school this year. She's a freshman, and we took her to her new high school, and her high school is awesome. This is the reason we bought this house three and a half years ago, was so she would be able to have the opportunity to go to a great school district to get a good education. That was my wife and I are both teachers. We wanted her to have the best shot at a good education. So she gets this high school. It's very rigorous. But we're walking her through. She's just typical kid. She's cheerleader. She's a smart kid. We're walking her through. She's nervous about like where all of her classes are, the week before school starts. But here's the thing. Nobody in her class uses lockers. They have lockers everywhere, just like any high school. I mean, there's lockers in every hall everywhere. But apparently none of the kids use lockers anymore. Like I had two lockers in high school. I had one on one half of the building, one on the other half of the building. Actually, I had three because I had a sports locker in the gym for my baseball equipment or basketball, depending on what season it was. So I had stuff stashed everywhere. I don't know what the deal is. And I don't know if this is true of where your kids go to school, and let me know in the feedback. Again, patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. But she lugs around every single book and everything she needs. Now, she does put her cheerleading bag, because she has a separate bag for cheer with her poms and her uniforms and shoes and all that stuff. That does go in a locker in the locker room down by the gym. She doesn't haul that around all day. She has a separate locker. She keeps that in there all the time. But as far as her academic books and binders and folders and all that junk, scientific calculator, like she carries this big backpack around all day long to every class. In high school, we went to our lockers between every hour. And that's kind of where you met your friends. Andrea said, you would get your lockers together. Everybody would kind of meet at the lockers. You would swap out. Okay, I went to social studies. Now I'm going to science. I would drop that here. I grab that book and that folder, and I'm out. And you'd see your friends at the locker. And a lot of times you share lockers with a couple people. And that's how it went. I mean, that's kind of it's like your apartment or something in high school. They don't use the lockers apparently. I was blown away because that was kind of like that was like your home base. So how is it for your kids? That seems weird to me. I don't know if that's like just a Howl thing or what, but that's kind of where we are. So thanks for that feedback. And again, if you have feedback on this show or any show, I love your feedback, and it'll be on next week's show. So again, patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. All right. So it is Labor Day here in the United States. And I didn't even write this down, but I wanted to quickly hit all of the jobs. Because again, Labor Day, if you don't know, you do. It's a day to kind of rest and take the day to remember all of the hard work our labor force does all year long to keep our country productive, to keep our country awesome, because our workforce works hard. Trust me, I know my dad works hard. My grandpa worked hard. My wife works extremely hard. Everybody works hard. We all work hard every day. And it's nice to kind of have a day to slow down, a weekend to kind of wrap up summer, maybe grill and spend a little more time with friends and family. But I thought about, okay, what jobs have I had? If I had to list everything, every job, kind of official and unofficial, since from the time I first got paid to do anything until now, how many jobs have I had? I was thinking about this last night because I wanted to do something that was associated to Labor Day, but also was, Mike in the Midwest focused. So I was thinking about it. So, and I've talked about a lot of these jobs here on the show. So first of all, I could talk about when I was young. I probably started getting paid for anything. I never got an allowance, so I can't say that. But I did cut grass with my buddy Ryan, and we talked about that story. I think where he rode his riding lawnmower through the lady's garage door on one of the previous episodes. One of our greatest moments of our childhood. That's like a Sandlot movie story. So I cut grass. That was one of the jobs I did. I used my Commodore 64 to make flyers on Print Shop to put all around the neighborhood. I put them in mailboxes, which I found out was a federal offense. Didn't go to jail, didn't do hard time for that, but I did find out that was illegal. Let's see, what else did I do when I was younger? One of the biggest jobs that I did and I loved, and the thing was, even when I was younger, I put everything I had into every job I had. I always worked hard. I mean, I think that was my dad and my grandpa put that into me, but I always made sure I did a good job. I umpired for 5 years of up at Florissant area Corey League baseball, and I loved it. And you didn't get paid much, and I probably spent most of my earnings on pepper bellies, which were the specialty of the house. There it was a bowl that you got that at the bottom had Fritos. Then it had chili on top of the Fritos and had cheese on top of the chili. And so every time that I got done umpiring, I'd usually do two games. I do one at 6:15, one at 8:30 on nights where I wasn't playing because I played a lot of baseball too. So the nights I wasn't playing, I was umpiring. And so I'd usually get baseball cards and a pepper belly. And yeah, did that. I remember one year though, I saved up and got a water bed though. So that was kind of a thing. But yeah, I umpired. So that was kind of what I did until I was like 14-ish, 15. And I kept doing it, beyond that. But I remember doing that really when I was like 14, 15, 16, 17. Also, I worked at the skating rink. I've talked about that many times. I started out, when I was 14 years old. My next door neighbors owned the skating rink, and the owners were my babysitters when I was a kid. The wife was my babysitter. So I was at that rink from the time I was like 6. So I was the DJ from the time I was 14, and I worked there all through college. I ended up running the place, managing it, and so forth. And like I said, I worked there for years, and that was probably the job. If I had to look back on the jobs I enjoyed the most overall, that job was probably the most fun job I've ever had. I loved it because I made so many friends there. I played a ton of roller hockey. I did a ton of speed skating. And because of speed skating, I got to go some cool places. Like I went to Lincoln, Nebraska. Well, you might say it's not a cool place, but I loved it. Shout out to Wade up in Nebraska. But we'd speed skate every year in Lincoln, Nebraska in the regional championships. I would go to Chicago. I would go to Florida. We went to Arkansas every year to Fort Smith. We went to Springfield, Illinois Springfield, Missouri every Easter for the shootout. And I really made some of my best friends for about a 10-year period there from the skating rink. And, I spent every holiday there. We'd have a New Year's Eve lock in, we'd have a back to school lock in, a schools out lock in. And, I was just the best of friends with the owners, Ron, who's the greatest guy. And, got to play a ton of roller hockey and just make great friends. And it was the easiest job ever. It was just playing music, hanging out, drinking Pepsis, eating hot dogs, eating pizzas, eating Otis Spunkmeyer cookies. It was the good. Didn't pay a whole lot, but it was the easiest job ever. And it allowed me to go to college, get my teaching degree during the day, in that because it wasn't open during the day, so I just go in and work at night, and it worked out really well. It's a super easy job. I mean, you just sat there and played music and ate stuff, so it wasn't super hard. So I enjoyed that. Another job that I had for about 5 minutes, this is one that I've never talked about, is that I got a job working on the ski lifts at a place called Hidden Valley Ski Resort here in St. Louis. It's actually in Eureka, Missouri. And what it is, it's a golf course in the hilly part of St. Louis County. It's right next to Six Flags. If you're ever in St. Louis, it's kind of right before you get to Six Flags, a little bit east of Six Flags. And it's a place that in the summer it's a golf course, but in the wintertime they have snowmaking machines, and they cover the golf course with snow. Back then they only had like 2 ski runs. But now it's a lot bigger. They have like snowboarding and tubing and stuff. But back in the day, it was real small, but it was fun. And I decided that'd be the greatest place to work because you get to ski for free. And I wanted to ski. I wanted to learn I wanted to be a good skier. I was a skater. I wanted to be a skier. So I went out there. I went through all the training on a Saturday, went through all the training on a Sunday, got my big Hidden Valley sweatshirt as part of the uniform. Found out I was, going to be giving out skis, giving out poles, giving out boots, maybe possibly working out on the slopes. And then I was like, it was a 45-minute drive each way from my house. And I'd be doing this drive, and it was really hilly at the second half of the drive. And I'd be doing this drive from, like in December. And I didn't have a reliable car. I had an MGB, and I had a 1991 Ford Ranger, which didn't do well in the snow. I was like, this isn't good. And I'd be using all my money in gas that I make. So I was like, so I never really worked there. I did like 1 or 2 shifts and I called it a day, but I did have that job. So that was kind of what I did there. Also, of course, I substitute taught. I did that for many years. Obviously, as I was, I did that during the day. What I would do is with substitute teaching, that gave me the experience for when I wanted to get my full-time teaching job. So that was kind of something that was necessary, but also gave me experience, helped me make those connections. I didn't know it was called networking back then, but that's what it was. I made connections with principals, other teachers, got experience. That got me into a semester where I could have graduated earlier, but I took a semester and worked before I graduated. I took a semester off and I worked as a full time teacher's assistant. And so I spent one semester not as a full-time teacher, but as a teacher's assistant. So I was in a building, it was called Coldwater, and I just bounced from classroom to classroom, and I was there every day, all day, and got paid a base teacher salary without benefits, but got to really get experience doing everything. I did recess duty, I did lunch duty. I helped out in the kindergarten classes because at that point they had AM kindergarten and PM kindergarten, but I was in there during the transition when the AM kids left and the PM kids arrived. That's when the teacher had lunch. And so I was in charge of the classroom then. And oh my God, that's when I learned I never wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. Kindergarten kids are nuts. That was shout out to the kindergarten teachers. You should be getting 100 grand a year minimum. It's nuts. But I got a lot of experience there. So of course, then I became a teacher. I taught for 17 years. Oh, one thing I missed there is that I worked at Chick-fil-A for 3 weeks. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this story. I had a good friend, Ryan, and he worked at the mall at Chick-fil-A. This is in high school. And this is when I was working at the skating rink and also playing baseball and everything. But he told me, he's like, Mike, he's like, dude, I just got this job at Chick-fil-A at the mall. And everybody wants to make more money in high school. And he's like, I'm making like 485 or like 515 an hour. I couldn't, whatever it was 50 cents more an hour than I was making at the skating rink. And I'm like, dude, you're making more money than I am. And I've been working at the skating rink for quite a while at this point. I'm like, you're making more money than I am. I'm like, can you get me on at Chick-fil-A? And he's like, yeah, probably. They're still hiring. So I'm like, okay, yeah. And he's like, you're off Sundays. It's great. We can be off on Sundays. We can do whatever we want. The mall's kind of fun to work at. You get to be there after hours, kind of cool to see. I'm like, yeah, hook me up. So I get it, do the interview, go through, I remember sitting with the guy that owned the restaurant, in one of the tables out, in the dining room, get the job, go through all the training. I know all about how it works, about the upselling at Chick-fil-A. If you ever want to know about the boards, it's called the boards when you put the sandwiches together and work in the front lines. Anyway, sampling was a big deal at the mall because you had to have little nuggets and give them out. Anyway, I get the job. Now, this is around, I want to say I got this job in around November, and I worked for 3 weeks, and that was it. Because now nowadays, Chick-fil-A is everywhere. We have a Chick-fil-A zero point 0.6 miles from our house. Like I can almost see it from the top of our street, because it's right across the dual highway here. My girls go there too much. They're always at Chick-fil-A. But back in the day, this was the only Chick-fil-A in St. Louis, and it was at our mall. It was about 10 minutes from our house. And so this place was a nut house. I mean, it was a crazy house because there was not Chick-fil-A was a thing, not like it is now, but it was busy, busy, busy. And this was back when the malls were crazy, like in the this was early 90s. So the malls were still packed. And I just remember working there. And I mean, I swear I remember there had to have been like 30 or 40 people working on each shift. And this was, especially during the weekends, lines were like, 20 people deep and just 30 or 40 people trying to keep up, and we could not keep up. Excuse me. And I just remember I told myself at one point, like I was working the register and then I was trying to put the sandwiches together and get the nuggets in the boxes and trying to keep up with the chicken salad sandwiches and the lemonades and all the stuff that I love because I love Chick-fil-A. But I just remember, man, I was like sweating. I had the polo on, that red polo, the slacks. I was just like, I just remember telling myself one night, and then you're done with your shift at like 11:30 at night, and then you have to mop the whole dining room and tear up these boxes with a box cutter. I just remember one night I told myself, I'm like, Mike, this is not worth 50 cents an hour more. I'm going back to the skating rink and just sitting on my rear end and playing music and drinking sodas. And I was nice to the guy. I told him I'll finish up my 2 weeks if I need to, but I'm gonna have to pass on this job. And he's like, "Oh, go ahead." He's like, "It's not for everybody." He's like, "I appreciate you telling me that." And he's like, "I appreciate you coming in." But yeah, I just remember I was like, "Whew, that was a rough job." I am not meant to work in fast food, but I think everybody should have to do it for like 5 minutes because that made me appreciate what people in fast food have to go through. That was rough. I've never worked as a server, but Pam worked as a server for many, many years at a Mexican restaurant. And the stories she has told me are crazy. Isn't it kind of ironic though that she was a server at the fancy Mexican restaurant, like sit down Mexican restaurant, because I could live at a fancy sit down Mexican restaurant. And of course, then I worked as a teacher. I taught my first year. I taught second grade in a classroom where the teacher. So I graduated college with my degree in January. So that's kind of weird because it's really hard to get a teaching job in January. But I did get a job the next. I interviewed in December. I was hired for a job that I would start the month. I graduated on a Sunday. I took over for a class on a Monday because there was a class, a second grade class, where the teacher dropped them off to music and PE and never came back. Like she took them to their special classes and just went to her car and never came back. Her name was, I shouldn't even say her name. I know her name because I got her all of her mail the rest of the year in my mailbox. But this class was bad. I get why she left. This class was bad to the bone. But I was like, I can handle it. So I was hired and I finished out that year from January to June teaching these second graders. And I'll tell you what, every day at 5 o'clock, dude, I was out on the couch. I was so exhausted. These kids wore me out, but I learned so much in that class. We had a hamster named Harold. I remember he bit Haley. I shouldn't have had it. That hamster got loose. We had it in the little ball where it would roll around the classroom during silent reading. We didn't pay attention, end up in the principal's office. They did an all call. If anybody's missing their class pet, come down to Miss Norvell's office and you're in trouble because they knew it was mine. I was like sweating bullets there. Um, yeah, great memories from that first year of teaching second grade. And then I went back to the building where I did my student teaching. That was Wedgwood. And this was the building that I fell in love with when I did my student teaching. I wanted to teach at Wedgwood. And this was when I really wanted to teach sixth grade. Unfortunately, I was hired to teach sixth grade at Wedgwood. And even more fortunately, Pam was a sixth grade teacher at Wedgwood. She hired me. So is part of that squad. She was on the interview squad. So we got to teach for 9 years together next door to each other. So that was fun. Then I moved on to teach gifted education for 7 years over at the Gifted Center. That was a hoot and a half. I got to do all kinds of cool stuff. I also taught at Space Camp down in Huntsville, Alabama for 2 summers after attending Space Camp for Educators. I taught some of the best teachers anywhere in the world came to Space Camp. These teachers all got to meet the president of the United States. Well, the ones that I got to teach at International Space Camp the last week of the year, all these teachers were either the state teachers of the year or the international teachers of the year from their countries. And they got to do 6 events throughout the year. One was to attend Space Camp. Another one was to ride with the Blue Angels. And another one was to visit the White House and visit the president. And so I got to quiz them about what was it like to meet the president? What was it like to ride the Blue Angels? And they're like, and then they're listening to classes that I'm teaching at Space Camp. I'm like, this is wrong. Like I should be listening to you. You should not be listening to me. It was an awesome experience for me though. And then of course I got the opportunity to become a podcaster and a travel agent, which I am doing currently. And it's kind of fun on this Labor Day to reflect, like you learn something from every experience you have. From umpiring, I learned a lot. You have to turn the other cheek. From cutting grass, you got to be you got to hustle if you want to get that job in the neighborhood because other kids were cutting their grass. Uh, you know, People work hard. Blue collar jobs are hard in fast food. They're hard. They're thankless. And I think you got to kind of think about that. Whatever job you have, you've probably had 10 of them, but I think you've taken a little piece of every job and it helps you in your current position. And I'm not even sure that this is going to be my last job. I love that I was able at the age of 40 something to make a whole 180-degree career change because I wanted a new challenge. I want to see, could I be the best travel agent I can be and just totally walk away from education? That was scary. Dude, I lost so much sleep over that because education was safe. I was a good teacher. I mean, I got great evaluations. My families loved me. It was just, and not bragging, but I mean, it was safe. Like I was very comfortable with that role. I liked what I did and I put the time in, I built the relationships and I was I was a known in our district. People knew what they were getting with Mr. Rallman's class. And it was, something I didn't have to stress about too much at that point. But then to just totally walk away and become a travel agent full time and do the podcast, that was risky. And it still is every day. I still lose sleep about it because I need your support. I need the Patreon support. I need you to book trips with me. I need you to listen to the show. I need you to enjoy our shows. I hope you always do. But that's why I try to always work hard. I try to always earn your time with every podcast. I try to make it worth your while. I try to always invite people on the show that are interesting every Monday. I try to always be a good listener, a good interviewer. I'm not trained in radio, but I try to learn. I listen to a lot of people that are good at this, and I try to do the best I can. And I think that's what we all do. So on this Labor Day, the biggest thing I can say is that I'm lucky to get to do what I do for a living. And I hope you are in the same situation. Maybe not now. I've had terrible jobs, but I hope that you can take something from your job because I don't love everything about my job. I hate waiting on hold with Disney. There's a lot of things I hate about my job. There's a lot of boring, mundane stuff that's inefficient. I hate stuff that is not efficient. I like being efficient in everything I do. There's a lot of stuff with Disney that is inefficient that drives me crazy. But in the end, when I know my guests are going to Disney and making memories with the people they love, that's awesome. That is what keeps me going. And then with the podcast, if somewhere out there you're on a jog or on a run or walking the dog or doing the dishes or sitting on a train somewhere and you giggle at something one of us says, that's a goal. Or it brings up a memory of something you did on a previous trip. That's why we do what we do. And that's what makes me happy with my job. So again, give me your feedback. What crazy job have you done in the past? What's the lesson you've learned from a previous job? Give me some feedback because the feedback is what makes Mike in the Midwest so awesome. So enjoy the rest of your Labor Day. Thanks for hanging out with me for the last 40 minutes. Until next week, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.